Welcome to our webinar number 6 in our series from World Printers Forum from WAN-IFRA. My name is Ingi Rafn Ólafsson and I am the director of the World Printers Forum and will be moderating this session. Our webinar today is titled Cases from Australia, Belgium in these cases of COVID-19 and how to move forward from post-COVID. Our speakers today are both very experienced in print production specialists, and you can see them here. And we'll go into more detail a little bit later about them. First, I want to appreciate the sponsorship of QI. Please visit their website and check out their products, www.qipc.com. First, I want to give you some heads up about our things that are moving on. We will have a webinar on 3rd of June, the next webinar, post-COVID strategies from the World Printers Forum. And we will also be inviting our members from WAN-IFRA to the World Media's e-Summit, which will take place on June 15th to the June 18th. Of course, non-members can also participate in that event as well. Finally, I want to tell you about the World Printer Summit that we discussed earlier in these webinars, and this will be the meeting point for the Newspaper Production Society, and that will take place in Klassikstadt, Frankfurt on October 6th and 7th. Look forward to seeing you all there. More information about this event will be sent out shortly. Of course, we have many more events that we might interest you, and please subscribe to our mailings and look for our things on our website. You know that, WAN-IFRA.org. I also urge you to sign up to our media panel that is starting shortly. Also, I'd like to tell you a little bit about that. Quite a big part of the world is streaming at the moment. This is something that we've been discussing in our last events. Just due to technical problems, you can call into the meeting in the number that's in the invite. There's a telephone number in the invite that you can call if you have problems connecting to the meeting through Zoom. Now to our speakers. Markus Hooke is a chemical engineer from Sydney University. Early on in his career, he worked in metallurgy in Australia and UK. After 7 years in this field, he transitioned to FMCG with Colgate-Palmolive, holding a number of senior leadership roles across Australia and New Zealand. Currently, Markus is the Executive General Manager of Production, Logistics and Property at News Corp, Australia. With more than 20 years of operational leadership, Markus has a wealth of knowledge on driving cultural change and delivering sustained improved operational outcomes. And our second speaker is Paul Huybrechts. He's a native Belgian and coincidentally a master in metallurgical engineering as well. It's a quite coincidence that we have two engineers that have transitioned into printing. We can be thankful for that. Paul has more than 20 years experience as a production manager, plant manager, and a business unit manager, working for international companies specialized in materials technology, globally in China, Australia, Malaysia, Norway, France, Belgium, UK, and the Netherlands. Since 2007, he has been working in the news media industry as managing director for Printing Partners, that is part of the Media House Group, responsible for the print and distribution in Belgium, the Netherlands, and Ireland. Our format is the same as it has been in the past webinars. First, we have both speakers talk for 10 or 15 minutes each, and then we do questions. You can post your questions in the Zoom mode with the Q&A bar. There's a Q&A small icon where you can post your questions. Please do. So to begin with, I'll say, let's start, Markus. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Ingi. Appreciate the introduction, and thank you everyone for the opportunity to talk to you about what's happening in Australia and our plans going forward. Before I jump into post-COVID, I might give you some context about where Australia's at to set the scenes for how we're going to prepare our business for post-COVID times. So News Corp in Australia runs 10 print centres around the country. We run multiple mastheads across all those print centres. When COVID hit, it was late January. It was a very slow start for us. And in about the 23rd of March, we started to see signs increasing. That's when the Australian market really had a lift in our COVID cases. At News Corp, we were ahead of the curve. So prior to any government directions to change our way of working, we actually moved to a work from home policy pretty early. So late March, we kicked into that. Since then, we've been in a pretty much lockdown situation at our print centres, where we have stopped non-essential people entering site. So we've defined that as people who are mission critical. So if the presses are going to stop, you're mission critical. If you're not involved in keeping the presses running, you're not allowed on site. So effectively, I've banned myself from entering the print centres because I'm not critical to the mission. We're still holding that pattern. As of today, Australia is only got 6,800 cases that we've measured. Currently, there's only 850 active cases, so we're quite low. We're in the position right now where the government, both federally and on a state basis, is talking about loosening the lockdown laws and really introducing the work and speeding the work back up. From a print centre perspective, we will lag on all that advice. Our intent is to be very safe. Our newspapers are an essential service, and one of the upsides we've seen through the early stage of the coronavirus was a substantial uplift in sales. We did see a drop in some of our retail sales at newsagents, but at the supermarkets and convenience stores, where people are going to buy their daily goods, we did see quite a substantial uplift in early days, which is a very positive sign for us that newspapers continue to be that trusted source of information. Coming out of COVID, we want to maintain a very vigilant approach to our print centres. So we've adopted a whole lot of protocols. I think some people might have spoken about this before, red and blue teams, where we're trying to keep people from interacting with each other. So we've got a very, if we do get an infection, we've got a way of controlling that from one group and isolating that into one group. As I said, our approach is going to be very slow in coming out. Our position we're taking is we're expecting the rest of this financial year will be slow in terms of recovery as the economy tries to come back. And we're positioning ourselves at being at risk of that second wave coming through. So we're very much saying we won't pursue anything too quickly about the workforce coming back in. So we'll maintain all our separations for a while. One of the interesting side effects we've seen through COVID, as part of our communications on site, we've been running daily toolbox talks with all our staff around how to work safely and maintain a safe operation, the social distancing. An unexpected side effect is we've had a much improved safety record. So we'll be diving into what's really driven that. We haven't got the analysis on it yet, but it's one of those, you might call it quirks that's come up where we've seen a lot less incidents and seen a lot less injuries. And we had a pretty good record coming into it, but throughout the whole period, we seem to have had a much better adherence to safety and safety performance. And whether that's people paying a lot more attention, being a lot more careful, we really want to make sure we grab hold of whatever message has resonated with our staff to deliver a better outcome. One of the things we see coming out of COVID, the Australian market has a very strong catalogue market. So, and with the catalogue market, those are the retail sales delivering their messages to the letterbox. It's always been a very strong industry here and continues to be. As COVID hit, that market really fell away. Probably for a couple of reasons. A lot of businesses didn't want to advertise, it seemed, through that period. Either they were selling because people were desperate for their goods, or their market had disappeared and they were unable to sell, or it was difficult to sell. Equally, the other challenge we had was having walkers, which is another business, deliver those catalogues to letterboxes. We're seeing that as a growing opportunity for us as we come out of COVID, in that the newsprint catalogue, or the paper catalogue, as opposed to the heat-set catalogue, is a really good opportunity for us to really support our customers and our advertising clients with getting the message back to market, because a newspaper is a way that you'll get the message back in the front door. So we're working very hard on how we can get into that market strongly once some of these restrictions are lifted. As I said, we're going to have a quite a slow recovery as we come back, and we're expecting we're going to have our sites locked down for the next 6 months. Challenge for that we're going to see is how do we maintain our approaches to the keeping the workplace, the R&M we've got to do, and various projects. So it's quite a difficult situation we need to balance over the next 6 months as we hold people back. We run various projects, but we try and maintain a safe workplace. Yeah. So what we've seen throughout this period, the other bit I look after are our properties. So when we're coming back into the workplace, pre-COVID, if you'd asked our editorial teams or our sales teams, can they perform their functions remotely, we would have struggled to look at how we're going to get a paper out with journalists not working in the office and journalists working remotely. The last 6 weeks, 8 weeks has shown us that we can work in a completely different way, and we can put papers out, and we can do everything we used to be able to do remotely. So one of the big changes that we'll see in our business going forward is how we change our property footprint. We've got numerous properties around the country. Some having 2,500 people, some having 2 people. So we really need to have a good look when we come out of the back of the coronavirus in terms of what our footprint needs to look like, how we can make the most of the work practices we've established and people work remotely. This conference is a good example. A lot of our meetings are now slipped into the Google Hangouts is the methodology we use, and we've been able to maintain the workflow and the work patterns we needed to, but in a different format. The balance we really need to strike as we move into looking at that property portfolio is how do we maintain the benefits of collaboration that the teams need, whilst getting the benefits of potentially having a lower footprint and giving people the balance of that work remotely. So that's going to be impacting the commercial front of the business, which is the editorial, the sales, etc. In the print centres, we don't see a substantial difference in the way we work. The crews that are associated with the sites all need to be there. We'll probably limit the number of people that are at site going into the future. They don't need to be there, and it's a risk we don't need to have on site. So I'm expecting that we'll keep a low profile in the print centres, once we get the full clear out of coronavirus. But where I'm seeing that the non-paper world, if you like, that we've seen that the Google Hangouts and the teleconferencing, I'm expecting we're going to get more of that in our commercial office and more of that flowing through to our benefit to reduced property footprint. So the big themes when I look at news coming out of coronavirus is maintaining the safe work practices. So understanding what this halo effect is we've had around improved safety performance that's come out of the messaging, because it's been an unintended side effect, if you like. Looking at how we can take advantage of some of those work opportunities that are out there. The catalogue market is something that we see a really big opportunity in. Low pagination, typically a 16, 24 page product, but high volume. So it gives us an opportunity to put more newsprint through our presses. We're expecting a substantially different way of working in the future. So how does that translate into our property portfolio? We've got numerous properties around the country. I'm expecting that once we've gone through the other side of this, and we're expecting come June, our government's going to start allowing more people back into the office. At the moment, it's still essential workers. Once that's relaxed, we'll see more people go back in. But we'll have a slow approach to how that works, whilst we really understand, how we get the best of what we've seen recently with the working remotely with COVID, versus how we get the essential people back in the office. There's some people need to be there for their collaboration perspective. And the other bit is, the other key theme we're getting out of this is that early spike we had around the newsprint sales. Really reinforced the early days of COVID, that the newspapers were the trusted source of information for people in Australia. So how do we grab hold of that strong message and make the most of it coming out the other side of coronavirus? The other challenge we'll have is when our CBDs shut down, because a lot of people started working remotely, a lot of our retail outlets then shut their doors. So once these start to be relaxed, we need to look at how we're going to get our logistics, our primary and secondary distribution networks started up again, to make sure that as those businesses, as people start to populate the offices again and populate the CBDs, that we've got papers in front of people when they're available. Because once they're back, we need to get that habit back in front of them. So getting the papers in the right place at the right time when the coronavirus restrictions are lifted is going to be really important for us. So yeah, the main themes I wanted to touch on. I didn't want to talk too much on what we're doing around coronavirus, because I think everyone's probably spoken about that ad infinitum.
Thank you, Marcus. Very interesting points you make there, and I'm guessing we will have plenty of questions to drive from there. So, Paul, over to you.
Okay, thanks, Ingi. First, I will tell you something about COVID in Belgium and the states up to now. Beginning of this year, end of January, we had our first COVID case in Belgium, a businessman coming back from Wuhan, China, and he was put into quarantine. So that was the first case. And then mid of February, as every year, a lot of Belgians went on holiday skiing in Italy, Austria, and France. But in the same period, we also had a lot of carnival parties. And today we believe that this combination of people coming back from their skiing holidays and the carnival parties was really the starting point of the spreading of the COVID virus in Belgium. The 2nd of May, officials in Belgium still stated that they believed that COVID would be something like an influenza virus, so nothing to be afraid of. But then, March 10, we had our first COVID patient who died in Belgium. On March 12, bars, restaurants, schools, shops were closed. And March 17, we entered into a lockdown, meaning that only essential businesses and industry could continue working. News media and newspaper printing was stipulated as essential business, so we could continue to work and to operate. Homework was obligatory, if possible, of course, meaning that in Belgium, in a very short notice, less than 1 week, more than 1 million people were put into temporary unemployment with government aid, so-called Kurzarbeit. Hospitals started to increase capacity. Belgium was able to further increase the number of intensive care in units, including the availability of ventilators, to a rather relative high number of 2,300 beds for a total population in Belgium of 11 million inhabitants. So relatively high number of intensive care unit and beds. What is the status today? We have today over 8,300 deceased people, so people who died, presumably from COVID. We never had a problem or a shortage of intensive care units, meaning that the peak of number of patients in intensive care always stayed far below the maximum capacity of 2,300 beds. So that's good. But of these 8,300 people who died, more than 50% of them deceased in the nursing homes for elder people. So a lot of them were not tested, and they are assumed to have died caused by the COVID virus. Now, this week, May 4th, gradually and very carefully, we are coming out of the lockdown. B2B business started up again to operate. At this moment, the government is discussing about next steps, and probably as of next week, May 11th, shops will be reopened. May 18th, schools will be reopened, but partly. So, and that's more or less the situation and the views we have up to now. The message remains, the same COVID virus is not yet defeated in Belgium, or I think even globally. And we have to stay very careful and cautious not to become infected. Our motto is that life will not continue as usual. We will come to a new normal. And last weekend, at the occasion of the annual shareholders meeting, Warren Buffett and Berkshire Hathaway stated, the world has changed. COVID has changed the world. Flying, traveling, working, shopping, everything has changed, he said. We believe that some of these changes will remain, and we have to adapt ourselves, also in our industry, in our news media and newsprinting industry. So what is the impact on our business? How do we see that? Media House, our parent company, is a news media publishing company. Creation of content, news is our core business. And we are active in Belgium, in the Netherlands, Ireland, and since end of April also in Luxembourg. We have a turnover of more than €1 billion and over 3,700 staff people. Now, COVID-19 severely impacted our advertising revenue. An important part of this revenue is still generated via our print products. Revenues from digital advertisements is growing, but not yet compensating the decline in print advertisement. So that's the first important element. Fortunately, the largest part of our revenues is based on readership and subscription revenues. And COVID-19 really boosted our digital sales of content. We clearly saw a huge increase in visits to our websites, to our apps, and also our sales, digital sales increased to the readership. Content is not for free at Media House. We work with paywalls, and we clearly saw, again, that people are interested in trusted content and are interested and ready to pay for it. So that's really very important also for the future. We saw an increased higher double-digit growth of our digital sales, which also partly influences the sales of our new printed newspapers. Because we have a popular subscription model. Saturday publication is on print in news with newspaper, and during the week only digital content sold. So that's a very popular subscription model, and due to the higher sales also digital, we also sell a little bit more newspapers. What we saw also in our newspapers in the Netherlands, in Belgium, in Ireland, also in Luxembourg, is that we went down in pagination. Less advertisement, of course, but also, and also very important, is that less sports content, no cultural events. All these elements forced us to reduce the pagination. And due to the fact that big sport events like the Olympic Games, football championships are cancelled, we will see this impact on pagination probably will continue for many months and even for the whole year. So that's our view on the immediate future. Now, COVID-19 also learned us that we are able to publish a newspaper, generate excellent content with almost everyone working from home. So remote work is realized also for the journalists. And this experience will for sure have a further impact on the future and the way we will work once COVID-19 is over. So for us, a new normal will be and will become more working remotely, more working from home office. Of course, our printers should come to the print shop, that's clear. But a lot of jobs and a lot of tasks can be done remotely. And that is clearly shown during this crisis. More and more of our newspaper titles already moved in their newsroom towards digital-first approach. What does it mean? It means that content is created and generated first for the digital world, for our apps, for the websites, etc., for the digital sales. And the paper publication comes later. This evolution in the newsroom will be further pushed due to the COVID-19 experience. And meaning that COVID-19 will further increase the pace of change in our newsrooms, for sure. When we focus to newspaper printing, what is then the impact? How do we see the future? Of course, like Marcus said, our teams are organized in a slightly different way. Social distancing is very important. Always washing hands, using split teams. For the administrative people, more homework. These things are done. But there is more. We believe there will be more. When we go back to last year, 2019, we had 2 print plants operating in Belgium. 1 in the Netherlands, 2 in Ireland. And since the end of April, thanks to the acquisition of St. Paul, the #1 publishing house in Luxembourg, we also have a print plant in Luxembourg. So that's the situation. Now, in December last year already, we closed 1 print site in Belgium after having concluded an important retrofit and renewal investment in our bearing facility. In March this year, we closed 1 print site in Ireland. These closures were decided and scheduled before COVID-19. As I said, in all our print plants, we faced a reduction in pagination, and we believe this will continue also for the next coming months. And as explained, the shift towards digitalization on the publishing side in the newsrooms, further pushed by the COVID virus, that will have also an impact on the number of copies we have to print, especially during the weekdays. So the impact of the Saturday number will be less, and we even see for some titles that this impact is not existing for the Saturday publication. So that's also a change we'll see, and further, let's say, boosted due to COVID. In our Belgian operation, and that's another element, is that we also have an important third-party printing business. So not only printing our newspapers, not only printing products for our own publishing house and the shareholder, but we are also printing for the third-party market. And that's not limited only to the Belgian market, but we also operate for the Netherlands and France. Now, due to the COVID-19 virus and the lockdowns in all these markets, an important part of this business, of these printing jobs, disappeared in 1 week, since mid of March. Now, let's say beginning of May, we see some signals that some jobs are coming back. Also because the government started to reopen a little bit, let's say, the lockdown situation. But it's going very slowly. And I also believe that some of our customers are facing difficult financial times. I am not sure that all of these third-party business and third-party jobs will come back. On the other hand, we believe we have a certain strong position in the market. We are known as a flexible and a quality-driven printer. So we see new opportunities. We see new customers coming. So as a result of this crisis, we believe that the printing business and the newspaper print business, especially in Europe, will further consolidate. it's clear for us that smaller printing houses, smaller publishing companies will face difficult times, financial times, and have to decide about their future. And the remaining printing plants, newspaper printing plants, in our point of view, should become even more lean and mean organized. Also focusing more and more on quality, being more flexible, and so the operations have to change more and more, that's for sure. Focusing back and looking back to paper consumption, we believe, and I speak about Europe, that paper consumption will further decline. We saw the figures of March, have a view on April. It's clear that for us that the volumes which are lost in March and or April will not completely come back. Meaning that I fear that extra measures should be taken to balance again the supply side of the market, and should come back to a more healthy balance between demand and offer in Europe. That's our view. So as a conclusion, for the publishing side of our company, but also for the newspaper printing side of our company, and for the distribution is the same. COVID-19 will have a remaining impact. We believe that COVID-19 will have a remaining impact on our industry. Some evolutions, as I described, digitalization, digital first newsrooms, more digital sales, all these things are happening, and these evolutions will be further accelerated. So to conclude, I would say the world has changed and COVID has changed the world. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Paul. Also quite a lot of valuable information in there. You mentioned the new normal. I think we'll talk a little bit later about that. Maybe I can get some feedback from both of you, and I'll start with you, Paul, since you were finishing your. What about distribution? How has distribution changed in the times of COVID?
Yeah, when I look to the Netherlands, where we operate ourselves, the distribution, so we are responsible for bringing the newspapers from the print shops to the letterbox of our readership. So it's a subscription model, and there's a little bit interesting to tell is that in the Netherlands this is done by freelancers, let's say, people who have a 1 hour, 2 hours job. Before COVID, we had some difficulties to find enough people to distribute the newspapers. Now, because of COVID, a lot of businesses were put in a lockdown, had to shut down, meaning that we were able to get more people doing this early morning job. This has an impact on it, on the distribution, that when we look to complaint, registration and all this stuff, that our operation in distribution went more smoothly than before. It's a little bit strange thing, but that's the reality. There was no problem in distributing due to the COVID virus in itself. Of course, we took all measurements and measures to prevent accidents to happen, let's say, but it went smoothly. In Belgium, distribution is outsourced to third-party companies, and that also went very smoothly. Also, thanks to the fact that the government decided that bpost, which is a main operator in Belgium to deliver the newspapers in Belgium to the subscribers, was designed as an essential business, an essential industry, with a high priority to deliver the news to the people. So that helped and supported a lot the distribution of our newspapers. In Ireland, situation is a little bit different. There it's a single sales copy model, single copy sales model. There we faced some closures of retail, of shops, but at the end it worked out rather not too bad, let's say. So overall, distribution was not really impacted by COVID.
Marcus, what would you say about that?
From an Australian perspective, similar story. So the subscriber sales are still easy to fulfill, and we've got about 3,000 to 4,000, 3,000 to 3,500 contractors, subcontractors that are either primary freight or the home delivery network. But knowing that that was a fixed address that those papers are going to, that was easy to maintain. Probably the biggest challenge for us was the shift in the retail sales. So as we saw some newsagents have a different foot traffic, I mentioned before, the CBDs, the population got really quiet. So where we'd normally sell a lot of papers in the CBDs, we had to very quickly turn that around and move those papers to other areas where people were working remotely very quickly. So we went into lockdown or working remotely from the 23rd of March. That weekend, we upped our weekend print by about 3 to 4% because we got some very early telltale signs that the retail sales in the supermarkets was picking up significantly. So we had to, the biggest challenge was not actually getting the papers out, it was getting the papers to the right place where the customers were, because we picked up a pretty quick change in behaviour for how people were where they were buying their newspapers. But we had no issues with our primary or secondary distribution networks and getting into the lawn or getting to the shops. Just getting to the right shops was the biggest challenge.
Thanks. It seems like both of you are talking about lean and mean, or the company needs to be more lean and hopefully not too mean. But could you take an example of how you see your company becoming more lean into the post-COVID? You start, Marcus.
Streamlining our business is a journey we've been on for many years. I think if you're in the newspaper industry and you're printing papers and you haven't been streamlining your business, and you're probably one of the ones that's had consolidation thrust upon you as opposed to be the consolidator. So I don't, in terms of the way we produce the newspapers and the way we operate the print centres, I don't think there's a substantial opportunity in that. I think what we'll probably see coming out of coronavirus, though, for our print centres is having more security in our supply chain. That's probably the greatest risk we picked up out of this, which was our paper we buy locally. There's a mill in Australia and there's a mill in New Zealand. New Zealand went into complete shutdown, and the overall supply of newsprint to Australia effectively halved overnight. Our ink is supplied out of Spain, our plates are also out of Europe, our blankets are out of Europe. So we watched very nervously as Spain and Italy had some really serious issues. Fortunately that the supply kept up, but what it does highlight to us is that we need to have a much more secure supply chain. So I don't think we'll see substantial changes in the print centre because we spend a lot of time leaning those down. I think the opportunity is going to be really, as I touched on before, our property footprint and where, what our properties are costing us and what those occupancy costs are, and how we can make the most out of some of those flexible work practices. One of the things we've seen coming through COVID is there was initial impact of people work from home where it was seen as a burden, but as we've been 6-8 weeks into it now, people are expressing the view that they like and they want to keep some of that going into the future. So how do we support what the staff want and at the same time have a leaner commercial office? I think that's really where we see the big opportunity is how we run those commercial offices and how we, I think as both Paul and I mentioned, editorial putting out newspapers from home was something that was probably expected 2 months ago, where it's now a daily exercise. So what are the opportunities coming out of that? And I think there's something that all businesses are going to look at very, very closely when the world gets back to whatever that new normal is.
Paul?
Yeah. First of all, I agree with Marcus that I think we all have to look carefully what's going on or what will happen on the supply side, the supply chain. Okay, COVID will have an impact on that too. So that's, let's say, an important element to watch and to look at. That's first. Second, lean for us though. Another example, for instance, is that the virtual meetings, what we are doing now, that's working so efficiently, let's say. We used to travel quite a lot, being or operating in different countries. Yeah, you see now that life goes on also via virtual meetings, and so that will be more used in the future. That's for sure. So as an example of becoming more lean, let's say. Another element, focusing on the products, we are looking also to our products, meaning that it's time to look again on the product definitions, how they are printed. Could you integrate some products? This kind of concepts should be looked at too, in order to further have a better and improved, higher quality offer to our customers, but also not always a more expensive, but a cheaper produced products too. And so you have to look at everything. So also at product concepts, for instance. Yeah.
Great. Can we speculate maybe a little bit about? Can we if we extract a little bit on the personal side or the human resource part, when you have the people that have been working from home, some like it, some don't. I mean, it's obviously something that you have to balance. Myself, I'm here in my son's bedroom working from home, so most of us are. Can you maybe speculate a little bit, look a little bit into the future about how we can maybe make that balance a little bit more equal somehow? Paul, you start again?
Yeah. I think working remotely, there are a few advantages, but also some disadvantages related to it. When you, one of the advantages, for instance, we are in Belgium with a lot of traffic normally. So working more from home, you lose less time to come to work. That's for sure an element which plays. On the other hand, working remotely from home, having kids, also in this COVID era, parents are supposed to do on pre-teaching because schools are closed, and together with their kids, the parents get also their homework to do. So that's not easy. So I think in the future we will see more homework, more working remotely, but it will be balanced, meaning that 5 days working from home, it's also not ideal. But so we believe that 2-3 days probably could become a more normal than 0 days working remotely, let's say. So I think that's important to recognize. For the printers, of course, that is not really an issue. They come every day, they do their print job. So industrial spoken, there is not a lot of difference, let's say. It's more for the publishing side, salespeople. Also, one element, of course, salespeople going to the customers. Today, also more is done via virtual meetings. You can do more in less time because you lose less time traveling, driving the car. So, okay, there a balance should be looked at too.
Of course. Marcus?
I think Paul's really hit all the points there. I mean, it is going to be a balance. You went from working completely in the office, now working completely from home, and there's going to be the balance in the middle. The commute is a big one for a lot of people. You lose that time. But also, I think, yes, at home you do have the distractions, but in the office, I think it's a massive inefficiency in an office where it's very easy to walk up to someone and have that casual chat and interrupt someone's natural workflow. So you don't get those disruptions at home, whereas you get the disruption of maybe homeschooling. So there are different challenges in both environments, but there are definitely challenges in both environments. And it's what's going to be the balance. And I think, you know, our organizations need to be very flexible to how we accommodate everyone's needs. Yet some roles, as Paul touched on, a printer has to be there all the time. Payroll, for argument's sake, might need to be in there to be at their computer to be doing what they need to do. Other roles can be remote a lot more, and it's going to really depend on specific roles. So I think we'll be a lot more open-minded in how we address roles and how we look at the blend of working remotely and working in the office. It'll be, we've now got both bookends, and we now need to land in the middle of what's the right balance. Yeah,
great. Maybe we can extract a little bit further on that, because since we're talking about the employees, I mean, how has the morale been in for instance, in your company in these strange times? Yeah.
It's challenging. I think when I look at the print centers and the printers continuing to work, there was a lot of nervousness at first that they were still going to work, and they were happy that they were considered an essential service, but they were still feeling there was a bit of a risk with them, being out there and about when everyone else was working from home. We were very clear in the messaging around them and how to keep them safe, and I think that was very encouraging for them. And in fact, we had a contractor contract COVID and on one of our print centers very early on, and we handled it quickly and handled it very well, and that put a sense of relief through the organisation. So having that first case at a print centre actually gave all the printers a lot of confidence that they were safe. So the morale is held up to a degree. We're doing weekly surveys of our staff at the moment, with everyone working from home, what's working, what's not. Largely people are saying, they're wanting more of the work from home. Not wanting to do the 5 days, but they wanting to have a bit of a blend going forward. So from that angle, it's quite positive. We're getting pretty good scores on our on the engagement for people, but I think it's a lot more tiring for the leadership. You've got to spend a lot more time just checking in on people than you ordinarily would if people are in the office. So it's a different dynamic for leaders, but largely the morale is standing up, and the data that people are giving back to us in terms of how comfortable they are with the work arrangements is very good.
Thank you. Paul?
We see the same. We also did a survey between our people, and let's say for those who worked remotely, and there's the majority of them, they are in the beginning very happy with the solution. They also see it in the future that and hope that they can work more from home. There are also people after 7-8 weeks working remotely that they are really asking if they can't come 1 day per week to the office. So let's say more or less the same feelings as what Marcus spoke about. For the printers, there in the beginning we also felt this anxiety, so a little bit the worrying of the people because they were obliged to come to work. They had to move, they had to take the risk to come to work. So in the beginning that was not that easy, but when the days and weeks went on, and with all the measurements and precautions we took in the print shops, that faded a little bit away. So okay, I think the morale is okay, but for those who worked since or have been working for almost 8 weeks already only remotely, time should come that they can drink a coffee at the office at a certain moment. They are hoping for that, for sure.
Great. Maybe we can talk a little bit about, we have like 11 minutes left, and then maybe we can talk a little bit about the reading habits. Reading habits are maybe shifting a little bit from, like you said, Paul, that some of your titles had gone during the COVID when the printing went down. So are we getting the reading habits going towards the digital more and more and faster, and will we get them back? That's kind of my question here.
Yeah, first what we see, we have every day a press conference organized by the government with all the data coming out of the number of people in hospitals, the number of people on intensive care, also the number of people who died. That's every day at 11 o'clock. And we see it in our in the attendance on our websites and apps. You see go up the number of people watching to our news and to our streams. That's very remarkable. And we see that in all the countries where we are active. When there is a press communication of the Prime Minister in the Netherlands, the same way, a lot of attention digitally, of course, to follow the news. That is there. We believe that that will not continue for sure, but in any case, a lot of people again came back to the trusted media. They saw that with our brands, with our titles, we are not, we can be seen as trusted media. So at least we will see a positive impact also for the future. That's what we believe in. On the other hand, of course, we sell more, also digitally. We have new subscribers. They enjoy the news we give. So that will also last. Of course, there will be a churn rate, but in any case, there is a positive impact. Also on the newspaper part, the printing part in itself, to a lower extent, but it will be there. So I think this COVID crisis really demonstrated the importance of news media, trusted media, and okay, that was a good element for us, let's say, marketing-wise, so that will have a positive impact. Yeah.
Marcus?
I think marketing is the strong comment there. Yeah, there has been a decline in all ad segments in the market. So I think, you know, when you look at whether it's newspapers, you know, movies, outdoor signs, they've all had a decline. But what we have seen in terms of readership, which was, I guess, your question, news opened up the paywall for coronavirus stories very early on. So we took the position that it was public interest for people to be able to read what was happening around coronavirus. So yeah, that really opened the floodgates on people wanting to read about it. Those people reading those stories have started to fall away. I think there's probably been saturation. There's been a lot of stories around that. So that is, yeah, it's probably done its time. And as I touched on before, the other interesting thing we saw was early on, we had that lift, particularly in weekend sales, which was interesting that Paul had that as well, around people buying the newspapers because they wanted to get the information. So the consumer revenue, paid copies, we had that early spike. It fell away or dropped back to normal levels, I should say. But it was quite an encouraging story, and I think Paul probably touched on it beautifully when he said it's really been a good marketing story, and it's how we come out of that the other side. One of the other things we did through this process was provided an avenue for major retailers to have their message put out. So the banks, etc., are they still operating around coronavirus, and what are their plans? So almost like a community service to these people. And we've seen a lot of people, a lot of ads that we hadn't run for many years coming back in the newspapers to put their community message out there. So it was really a novel approach that the sales team took to re-engage with people through coronavirus that maybe hadn't advertised with for a long period of time to get them back into our product. So, will the stickiness be there when we come out the other side? That'll be quite, that'll be interesting to see. But definitely on the readership angle, we've seen, particularly because we dropped the payroll around coronavirus stories, there was a big uptake in people wanting to read about that. And newspapers, we had a nice little mini renaissance around newspapers for the beginning of COVID.
Great. We have only a few minutes left, but I just want to, you mentioned that you had all kinds of plans now that developed or you had some plans in place. What about the second wave? If there's a second wave of COVID, there are plans to, then you can use your first plan or what? Or what do you say about that? Marcus, if you could start.
So we're assuming there is going to be a second wave, not if. Mm-hmm. So we put in place, so we've got a half-hour gap between shifts. We used to have running presses between shifts. There's now a half-hour gap. One crew leaves before the next one starts. it introduces a bit of inefficiency, but it means the traceability and the contact is vastly reduced. We've closed the canteens and we've set up mini canteens around the factory. So people are eating in smaller groups, one person per table. We'll keep that in place for a long period of time. We're also not letting visitors come on site. Suppliers, salespeople can't come on site. That'll be maintained well into the future and until we're satisfied that the risk is substantially lower. And fortunately, Australia being an island, and with our borders closed at the moment, we're in a good position. So we actually got the luxury of watching the rest of the world and seeing what happens with first waves and second waves. But we're very much taking a conservative approach with the assumption that a second wave is going to happen, and keeping ourselves in a hiatus, if you like, in terms of the way we operate until we get through that, until we're clear.
Paul?
Yeah, the second wave or a third wave, we fear that, and that it could be a reality, meaning that the measures we take, we will continue to let them run, split teams, all these things. I think it's better to, for the time being, to continue that. And also on product sides, changes we have done, I think at least to the end of the year, we will continue to do that. And we'll see what happens. We have not the luxury to be on an island, so we must be very careful, I think, in Europe. Like Marcus said, no visitors allowed, etc., etc. We will continue to do that for the time being. Yeah.
Okay, we're almost out of time, so I'm going to give you both 1 minute to tell me and our attendees here in the meeting about the new normal. So if you can just build a picture or show us a scenario, what's the new normal, as you said before, Paul. So Marcus, I'll let you start.
I think it's very much what we're doing today. There will be a lot less travel. Similar to Paul, we've got 10 print centers around the country. I used to spend a lot of time flying from one print center to the other to do the various bits I needed to do. 8 weeks, I haven't left home. So that's very much a new normal that's going to be there. How we operate our properties is going to be substantially different. I see more on that front end of the business, or the commercial part of the business. It will probably have the biggest parts of change, purely because printers still need to turn up and put ink on paper. I don't see that being a big change. The way they operate, maybe, but more on that front end of the business, I see the way they work being substantially different. More of what we're doing here today.
Paul?
Yeah, I fully agree with Marcus. He told everything what I believe what is important. Just to want to stress a little bit the supply chain too. I think that's also an important element to look at, but the new normal is what Marcus described. Yeah.
There's one question here from one of the participants in the meeting. He's asking, are you compensating the staff that is taking additional risk?
We don't do that, no.
Okay. Marcus?
We don't believe we've got staff taking additional risk. We've managed the risk by controlling it, so we're not seeing an additional risk.
Yeah, in fact, that's what we say too, indeed. Yeah.
So I want to thank you both for a great meeting. I really enjoyed your presentations, and it was very informative. And I just want to thank QI as well, who was our sponsor today. And thank you to both of you and to all our attendees in the meeting, and have a good day and great week, and see you later. Bye-bye.